Time of meeting having arrived and a forum present, I call the meeting to order. I'll ask for a motion to approve today's board meeting agenda. So moved. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Are there any opposed? Okay, it's approved. Next item on our agenda is public discussion. Are there members of the public to address the board?
Only one.
No. Yeah.
So I think that there's a change to the agenda. Does that need to be done as part of the approval?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Maybe it does. Maybe it does. Let's back up. You're talking about 4A. Yeah. So I would like to propose a change to the agenda. The director's evaluation discussion. I'm not ready for that. It's just my fault. So I'd like to propose putting that on next month's agenda. And when it does, you'll recall it will not, when it reappears, it will not include board action requested. Just be a report to the board. So we'll put that on for the April agenda. So could I have a motion to approve the revised agenda? Moved.
I will second
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Thanks for catching that elsewhere. So the agenda having been amended, that takes us to 4B, which is a review of the volunteers policy. I don't know if there are any comments from the staff before the board talks about it.
Sam and Katie put this together. Sam's not here, but Katie, do you have any notes you'd like to share before conversation?
Doing a lot at the moment. Not a lot of substantial changes to this
Okay.
policy. I think in practice, the way that we work with volunteers is always an ongoing conversation within the library, but the policy related to it is pretty much stands.
Well tightened up.
I do have a question. In 505.5, since this is a policy that is applicable for multiple years, I wondered in the last sentence if we need the phrase with an annual event, because perhaps some year it wouldn't be possible for that.
Are we good with that?
And we have a variety of ways
Sure.
of recognizing people in addition to an annual event. So I'm just suggesting perhaps that phrase could be dropped.
I think that that's a
Which is practical.
Okay.
Can I ask about 505.1 and the wording? Why did we eliminate some of the other groups?
sorry. Thank you. I'm trying to pull that up after I had run out for a minute there. 505, sorry.
We simplified in 505.1G.
Mhm.
We not only added a group, we subtracted many other groups. So what was the thought behind eliminating some of these other groups?
Well, my colleagues can correct me if I'm wrong here, but we have actually in practice not worked with as many community service clients. We find it with the way that we're implementing volunteering in the library, we find that we're not working with as many personal development classes because we have minimal requirements that we need to meet in terms of the number of hours that volunteers need to meet in order to work at the library. And so a class, it might be an hour or 2 hours of service as opposed to the multiple hours that we would need them to meet. But that's, I think it's 20 or 30 hours over the course of a couple of months that they would need to meet. So it doesn't really work with that. And we considered that special needs populations are already a part of the volunteer pool. So they didn't need to be especially called out. That was the thought there.
Are the other categories you've added also part of the volunteer pool at this time? So if you've eliminated the special needs, but add the historically underserved, are the historically underserved and marginalized groups already part of the volunteer body already?
I would say yes, but I think there's a strong commitment in this institution to call out efforts to work with. marginalized populations.
A small diction change in that D, 5051D, suitable jobs makes it sound like these are employees. And I would say something like appropriate and appropriate activities or something to that nature. That takes it away from being a job, which it's not. It's, you know,
We use tasks.
Tasks.
elsewhere in the-
that's a task is the right word. Yeah, that's good.
Robin, are you suggesting either not changing 5051D or changing it further?
No, I'm mulling it over. I'm mulling it over the exclusion of some of the groups and, but I'm not recommending or asking for a change, just thinking it through.
Is 505.1D even needed?
I think one of the challenges we face with volunteers is we get more requests than we can accommodate. So I wasn't part of the committee that worked on this policy review, but I think that there is some merit to calling out the historically underserved or marginalized groups to help us communicate why we may say yes to one requesting group and no to another. I would say that it aligns with our values to use resources to try to address some of the systemic issues that go on in the community. And broader than that, and this, again, I wasn't part of this committee, but that feels like part of what's being reflected here.
I think also, we see that this is more the way that policies are going to be written more blanketed or broadly as opposed to calling out individual groups.
I understand what you're asking though, Joseph, and I do think the policy could function without D at all.
I mean, you could probably say, you know, provide meaningful experiences for groups and individuals who desire to volunteer as staffing permits and suitable tasks or jobs are available. Why do you gotta put the rest in?
Could you repeat that? Can you?
I'm not John, but I would something to the effect of provide meaningful experiences for groups and individuals who desire to volunteer as staffing permits and suitable jobs are available. I mean, volunteering is open to everybody, right?
Mhm.
I mean, I guess if you did something like that, then like what I suggested, then I guess you don't have to worry about who you might be including or excluding. Just a thought.
I'm sorry, but could you say one more time?
I said provide meaningful experiences for groups and individuals. I only included groups because it says special groups. I mean, groups and individuals who desire to volunteer as staffing permits, suitable jobs or tasks are available.
Any issue with that?
I think that our, as Sam and I were reviewing this, we felt like we were honoring some historic commitment on part of the institution for calling out a commitment to underserved and marginalized groups, and that's why we sought to continue to do that.
Right, I understand that too, but I'm not sure that I'm listening to both sides of this and I'm
Yeah.
not sure it belongs here.
Sure.
You know, I think that the idea, or if there's another point that needs to be made to particularly recruit from underserved portions of the community, or, because really we want to provide meaningful experiences for all of the volunteers, not just for a limited group. But our recruitment, I could see being focused on areas that would strengthen us as an institution.
guess I'm a little bit in that we don't really need D, can't. Because creating facilitate, because C has that create and facilitate strong community connections. Right? And empowering with knowledge and advocacy. So to me, that kind of is a meaningful experience personally. So I feel like it's a little bit covered already. I mean, I love it as a value, and I see where you're going, like to point to the library's values. But in a policy, I don't know if that you need it.
I think what D adds is the idea that we will have a limited ability to provide these experiences, that we can only do it as staffing permits and as suitable tasks are available.
Okay,
Well,
so
that
maybe
almost
that's
minimizes though, rather than advocates, the way I hear that. So it's minimizing our outreach.
I think it is. I think any of the ways we've talked about it, it's got a component that says we can't accommodate every person who wants to volunteer. No. I'm not taking a position on whether we should do that or not. I think. Any thoughts that people have?
Come full circle.
I mean, can you tag as staffing permits and suitable tasks are available to the A? Does that even make sense, John? Our wordsmith. Can we tag that to A, that last little bit? Implement programs and services that further its goals and objectives at a level not funded in the regular budget as staffing permits and suitable tasks are available. Is that too long now? I just made that too much.
My colleagues, sitting over here with me have pointed out that if we refer to 505.32, that it gives us some additional information that is pertinent to that.
Oh, so maybe that,
Is that further we can do?
yeah, maybe.
Could you clarify, are you saying it would meet the needs of the adjustment that she's recommending or of the inclusion of D altogether?
Or addressing jobs. For talking.
Right, that
Right.
it's really what we can only meet those requests if we have the availability.
So are you suggesting there's no adjustment needed, or are you supporting the removal of D?
I think that I'm comfortable with D staying because of 505.32. My guess is that D was introduced initially into this policy because of the kinds of requests that the institution was getting and wanting to be able to speak to it in policy directly.
Yeah.
And that is, those are ongoing requests to the institution.
Your thoughts?
I think Claire's point earlier was important that, we also have the library's values and strategic plan and other steering documents that are reinforcing this idea.
Right.
So if it feels like this isn't the place for it in this policy, I don't think it would be lost. And there's pros and cons to both of these choices.
How would people feel about asking staff to bring us back? There's enough words floating around, but I'm not sure I can capture them for a vote.
Can we add it back to committee for you guys to consider?
Yeah.
Like that we even need D if it's covered in other library values and everything that you guys do every day and other places. And also that since it already kind of says that based on interest availability, keyword availability,
Well, conversely,
and skills.
if we feel like, oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
If we feel that 505.32 covers it and striking D is acceptable. And our director feels like it's covered in other places within the values of the institution. And we could proceed.
Okay.
May I throw out one more thing for your group to talk about? Kind of coming back to John's point about using the word task instead of job. I want you please to bat around the idea of position, because in my opinion, position sounds a little bit like a job too. And maybe you talk about assigned tasks instead of a position, but again, just something for you to.
Where is that showing on top of 5.3?
It's in 50532.
It's on top of 5.3, and I'm not sure if we put the word task there.
No,
You
I don't think
put
another
role.
role for one would make
Role.
sense,
Yeah.
but I'm
Available
just kind
role.
of flagging the word position. And see if we can find something else that would
And that's a
convey,
good comment, a good one.
not employment.
All right, thank you. Good conversation.
So where are we? It's going to go back.
Going back to the staff committee to adjust and bring back to us. Next meeting. Shouldn't take too long. Which brings us to the director's report. Yeah, thank you for the detailed breakdown here.
This was kind of a dense one.
Yeah, a lot of good.
But it feels like, I would assume that none of the programs or services that we're talking about here are new to anybody at this table. But we talk about them sort of in conjunction with other things so often that laying out what they do individually seemed important. I was hoping to have sort of a more robust update about where we are with IMLS funding at this meeting. I will say there really isn't a meaningful update. There's been a lot of response to the executive order, are sort of arguing that IMLS is already compliant with what's being asked for in the executive order because the funding goes to statutory functions. It's already core project and program funding, not things that would seem like they don't fit that. So as more information comes out or more changes are available, I'm happy to leave to scoop in. Otherwise, it's not in this report, but I think we can talk just a little bit about general legislation updates. So the second funnel deadline is on April 4th. So by that date, policy bills need to be passed by their home committee and also where they were assigned to the opposite chamber. And then that will decide if they sort of are alive through that fall. The bills that we're watching the most closely are HF 880, which was the Enrich Iowa bill that we've talked about at some length before. And that one is still alive. We'll wait and see if it moves forward with that. And then HF 521, which is the obscenity exemption bill, which we've also talked quite a bit about. Again, not really meaningful updates, but they're still functionally alive. Senate File 493, which is a bill that would prohibit local governments from spending tax dollars on lobbyists, is also still alive. That one doesn't have quite as direct of an impact on us, but certainly something to watch as a Department of the City. And then Senate File 503 is an open records related bill that would sort of expand what communication is included in open records eligibility based on a list of criteria that they're framing as being closely connected to a city or a township. Eric Gores and I had a long conversation about how this would interplay with ILA and ALA work, which has been something that's been brought up many times in this legislative session. And there aren't really clear answers at this point as to whether those organizations would fit into this or not. There are a few organizations that are listed in the legislation, and ILA and ALA are not included. So it's not explicitly called out, it feels relevant, but we'll keep an eye on it, and I'll continue to update this board as we might have more information. And those are the pieces of legislation we're watching sort of most closely. This point in the legislative session is always kind of a waiting game where we watch and we wait, and there aren't always there's not always a lot of action until all of a sudden there's a lot. But I'm happy to answer any questions about the LSTA programs that I included in the document, or any other questions folks have about the current legislation. And we certainly have experts in the room who are ready to talk about how they affect their departments.
My political science BA is very distant now, foggy and fuzzy. Both houses of the legislature have to pass on these. All we hear about is the House. I mean, the House, those people are grandstanders, and they can introduce anything, and they do, because it plays back apparently to their constituents. But you don't hear anything from the Senate people, or I haven't, in the press. So are these alive in both houses?
Some of these have bills that came earlier in the session that were Senate files that are companion bills that go with them. I think both 880 and 521 have a Senate component bill. But you're right. I mean, it still has to process through both groups.
The other thing that the assumption that people were making in the notes or the minutes, but in the notes, I guess, is that this is a done deal, and that when Trump issued that order, that was the end of the. And I went and looked at the legislation. He signed the order in 2020 and in 2016. There are two different bills or
Executive orders, right? Executive orders.
Well, I guess so.
Oh, the bills.
Yeah, it was hard for me to kind of suss out what exactly they were, but he signed them.
Uh-huh.
I mean, so they have some legislative standing, or he wouldn't be signing them, I think.
Right.
And so, you know, I'm not being Pollyanna about this, that he would like to kill these things. There's no question about it, but he hasn't so far. And the language in which he issued that problem, or that executive order, says it will go back to its original purposes, and finding out what those are is a task beyond me. But I think the fact that he signed two bills that did this suggests that they have some legitimacy from the president, and they presumably originate in congressional decisions. So I would like us to know. I'm not quite sure how we're going to find this out, but I would like us to know what exactly the stature of those bills, U.S. Code Title. Well, I won't even read it. It's 20 Educational Chapter 72 Museum and Library Services. That's the signed by Trump on December 31st, 2018. So in his first term.
Okay.
And the public law 115-410. I guess that's the same one. Sorry. But there is a second one. But my head was beginning to spin. Trying to figure it out. But
we can certainly include that in the next packet to kind of break down what those pieces are that go into it. You're right that a lot of this isn't new language, and it feels a little bit more significant, I think, this time around because of sort of the wraparound politics that we're seeing at a national level, and then the action happening as far as federal departments being sort of restructured almost on the fly. But I think that doing sort of a breakout of all those pieces you just talked about makes perfect sense, and we can do that. By the next meeting, we may also have a little bit more information as to what the expectations from change are with that executive board.
Anything else on the director's report? That takes us to adult services. And we learned more about interlibrary loans. Any questions or?
I have for the summer library program, I have another small
Sorry.
wording thing. And in the last sentence, I would reverse the end of that sentence related to summer reading programs for library staff and have for library staff preceding this, so that the summer programs are not for the library staff, but for patrons of the library.
So there are trainings for library staff.
They are training staff.
Right, that makes sense.
But yes, I agree that could be made more clear.
Yeah, if you just reverse them with those two phrases,
Training session.
it becomes clear.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments on the adult services report?
Appreciate the details.
And two.
Yeah.
Very informative.
And Sam is not here, but there are questions on the community and access services report. I'm sure we can answer them. At least address them.
Elspeth, I've noticed on our website, we've had a few down days with the bookmobile. And I'm wondering, is this beyond regular maintenance? Are we starting to have lifespan issues with the bookmobile?
I would say no, and Angie can probably speak in more detail. Some of the recent ones have been weather, but those, we articulate that in the banner.
No, because this last one though, we had it in for a regular maintenance check and then city maintenance was like, your back brakes. Are really need to be looked at. And since the week that it was spring break and the 2 days that we took off were our majority of schools.
It's a good moment.
So it kind of worked out really. It's like you could wait till May when we take off for a week. But we thought,
It's already there.
back breaks kind of important, so.
Thank you.
Anything else? We can move on to the development department report. Katie, anything you wanted to point out or amplify?
Tickets are selling really nicely for Bright Future with about 200 participants at this point. We will stop selling tickets to that event at midnight the Sunday before the event. So, that's the event's on that Friday, so the preceding Sunday. And we've just seen an extreme amount of generosity in our community around this event in terms of sponsorships and people buying tickets and donating items to the silent auction. And we just couldn't be more pleased with the outpouring of love and support from our community. I'm also really happy about the advocacy newsletter that the foundation has been able to put out into the world. We've seen that there's been a lot of sharing of press release that the foundation released about the IMLS. And a lot of articles were published in news items created as a result of rounding up that information.
And my encouragement to attend the Bright Future event, I hearing through back channels about what a great event it's going to be. That is to say, Barb is helping with it a little bit, so it sounds amazing, and so yeah, encourage everybody to attend and bring a friend.
Come to Mickey's.
Is there any breaking news on the meeting of the two finance committees that took place yesterday?
I would just say that we had a really great conversation, and I've been tasked with rounding up more information for that to help move that conversation forward.
Yes, thanks for asking. It was a good meeting. Yeah. All right.
Don't forget to eat out at Mickey's tonight.
That's right. Go to Mickey's tonight.
That's right.
President's report. I'll just briefly mention that Jen let me know that a letter from a law firm addressed to me as board president had arrived in the office, and I got all excited, and it was nothing. Somebody mentioned us in their will, but there were actually no assets to be distributed. So, yeah. So, shoot. They, and we may have dodged a bullet there because the one item in the will was the drawing by my niece was left to someone. So I'm not sure what the other assets that we might have gotten would have been. Are there announcements from members? On to committee reports, and I don't know, Robin or Claire want to speak for advocacy?
Well, the advocacy committee met, and we included the staff with us, so we're working with the staff. I think we have a statement that we'd like to have posted in the library. Basically reinforcing our values. This was written during periods when there was more active legislative work going on. Right now, we're in a slightly different position, but it brings up the question of how do we do this in a more timely way so that we have a bit more flexibility in responding. So there's a system challenge on our side as a board. And then what we're asking for is a board response to this statement of values to be posted in front of the library. There's two folds of this. One's to clarify to the community what we think is important. The second is to stand firm with the staff that these are values that are important. You want to add anything to that? Or?
And a lot.
Claire did an excellent job on it.
Well, it also kind of came from the letter that we wrote a while back. Let's see, 2022. 2022, I believe I wrote it. And honestly, I literally did copy and paste it. But this is kind of the short and sweet version of what I wanted that letter to be, because I really feel like a lot of these things are just too long, didn't read. Right. So I wanted this to be something that could be fancied up with some graphic design, make a cute poster. I don't know exactly what I was thinking, but like a quick bullet point list of what we really stand for instead of that 5-paragraph essay that we wrote years ago and sent. And it was published and was somewhat read, but I just wanted something that would be a little bit more the same impact, maybe with a little more readability. And that's kind of where this came from, a real quick short sentence, a second sentence to explain what we're talking about. And so you guys are welcome to read it, and I will stop talking.
I want to say, I think this is quite wonderful. Also, I don't think I thought about the process very carefully. We can't adopt this tonight because it's not on the agenda. I checked with the city attorney this afternoon to make sure of that. So this is a great opportunity to discuss it. If there are any changes that need to be made, we can adopt it, endorse it, whatever we would do at our next meeting.
Got one idea, and I think it goes down the path of wanting to be tighter with the words we use. Why not just strike "we support" from every first sentence and say intellectual freedom, our First Amendment rights, parental force, local control, professionalism? That may hit harder.
Yeah, that may be something with the graphics department too.
Yeah.
What is most
What was
visual?
it?
Yeah.
In my imagination, those were like, that sentence was our big letters, and then under it was the little letters.
Right.
The other thing I will note too is we have kind of been back and forth about, we don't really want it to say Iowa City Public Library Board of Trustees values necessarily. We don't have a good title. So
Yeah.
if anyone's got a brilliant idea on that, it's not necessarily our board that's saying this, it's more of.
Well, and also we have values in our strategic
We have-
plan
yeah.
that are a little different than this. So
Speaking for the library.
So we didn't have a good title,
What
that's
if-
just what I put on paper.
what if at the top it said, at the Iowa City Public Library, we support. And then you have intellectual freedom, parental choice,
That'd be
local
great.
control,
I like it.
professionalism. That was great.
As to refer to the advocacy committee member.
I really support the idea of trying to do something short and sweet, so people will actually read it. I think that's a great idea. You're going to, with this comment, you're going to see where my head has been for the last 2 years. And that's school vouchers.
Hmm.
And one of the phrases that gets substituted for vouchers is parental choice. Meaning we
Oh,
support
right.
private schools, not public schools.
Yeah.
So to me, that's a little bit of a red flag phrase.
We don't use.
And I just wonder if we can find another way of conveying that, yes, we want parents obviously involved in interacting with their kids about what they're consuming. But that parental choice phrase has kind of become a lightning rod.
But Ellsworth, I thought, is there some other language that's more inclusive than parental that refers to the adults who care for the kids?
Custodians that are guardian.
I think I suggested, using caregiver in lieu of guardians in the second sentence of that.
Caregivers instead of.
We use caregivers a lot in our youth services materials because we want to be inclusive to the different structures. But I'm not sure I think it would work
Yeah.
to replace parental in the first part.
How about family choice?
Well, I wanna advocate that we keep parental choice because that is the verbiage that's been used against us.
I guess
And
that's
I think it's.
Bonnie where
important
I got it,
Right.
where I
think it's
was
that we
thinking.
conclude the same way we're saying, we agree with you. We believe in parental choice too, and this is what it means to us.
What does that?
So, it's a matter of finding common ground in some ways. So I hear what you're saying, but I think it was a purposeful choice.
That's why we ended up with local control as well, because that's a word that is thrown around a lot and will mean different things depending on who says it. And I think that's where we got local control as honestly, as recommended by Sam too, was involved in that conversation. But see what you're saying about parental choice and immediately thinks, right, it's immediately a private school idea,
Yeah.
right?
It's a code.
Right, it's a
Right.
code word, right.
Mhm.
But I think it's when we say, well, you can, if you are supporting a different perspective, and it's because of parental choice, we also agree that parental choice is an important value. However, parental choice means you take an active role in raising your children. When you're in the library. I think there's pros and cons, right? I think there's pros and cons, yeah.
Are librarians certified?
Mhm.
In the way teachers are? I mean, professors are not certified. We just.
Right, make it up as we go.
We
along.
make it up
Yeah.
as we go along.
Yeah.
But I mean, it suggests a professional, so librarians have to pass muster as professional.
Most.
If we're,
Yeah.
if we accreditation
So
standards.
it's part of our accreditation standards where to first become an accredited librarian, is accredited still the word? They changed it. Certified. To be a certified librarian, you first have to send in, I think your transfer, like you have to prove that you have that library degree.
Mhm.
And then in subsequent years, you have to earn a certain number of continuing education credits.
Oh,
We report that annually to the state through the state library's annual report. And it's part of the accreditation standards for what tier accredited library you are. We have I think 16 positions that require being certified as a librarian. And we have a handful of staff that maintain it despite not being required for their position. But yes, so certified is the word that we would talk about there. That could change in the future,
Not
but,
me.
but for now, that's.
I mean, it's true of larger libraries. I wouldn't say it was true of my small town library. I mean, I was, but
But I
it
think
isn't
it's
always
really
true,
interesting.
but.
This is how Hills Library almost lost their accreditation at one point. Is because the librarians, with the new model, they were suggesting we're not going to be certified librarians.
Yeah.
And that's one reason they came back to using some of our services. There's a history behind this.
But if we were making a statement as Iowa City,
Right,
Right.
we would
Right.
include it because
right.
it is part of this
Yep.
accreditation.
So you have maybe seen in the lobby a new version of the board photo, the graphic designer modernized what we used to do. I think that he would possibly using that as a base be able to kind of create a complementary visual design that would you like this brought back to the next meeting, you know, kind of with his work on it, and then you can see if that would help.
Are we still waffling on parental
Yeah,
choice? So I don't want to give it to the,
Yeah,
I don't want to give it to the designer if we're still not sure about.
yeah, I'd like to stand on that choice because they use the verbiage. The libraries is parental choice advocated for allowing the school voucher system, or is it? I mean, is it representing what we want to represent there, or is it like that?
I guess, what I would say is that it would be context, like, depending on who is reading it, depending on what content, what they're coming. But I think the second sentence explains what it is. I know that parental choice is a phrase that lots of libraries are trying to use now. To explain, how people should be making choices for their own families. We offer, when we go to the supermarket, we offer a variety of things, and it is up to the family to decide what is. I mean, the phrases that we use inside the library, very different than if we think of communities. So, as community members, like to all the people.
And I think that makes sense. And my filter, I'll admit, my filter is the school filter. And that's not really here, so.
Well, it is in some ways, because you're speaking to another Latin population. So.
Yeah, in that respect, do we want to scratch guardians there and put caregivers instead? They leave parents because parental choice, and then you're using parents to tie it together, but scratching guardians there and adding caregivers instead.
And I would say parental choice and local control are phrases that I use intentionally when I'm speaking to legislators. Again, it's sort of that language mirroring. I have thought before about if a soundbite is taken out of context and what that could mean, but it's felt significant to me to use both of those phrases as they apply to the way we design library service. And that's something that we talk about with policy quite a bit. When people have questions about sort of should things be restricted differently, we would just say we see the choice as part of embodying parental choice, and we want to have lots of things.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to keeping it in there because I don't think it could be construed as the Iowa City Public Library supports school vouchers.
Right.
That's great. But I just wanted to have a little conversation about that as a potential.
And then I guess my final ask would be, are the bullet points in the right order? To me, they were, but I also looked at them for a long time. So, like, is that the order of importance for our statements too? To me, it was, but maybe it's not.
I didn't imagine it going the other way.
Okay.
But that's right.
We call this the credo of the.
No. I like,
Could all go out and get matching tattoos.
Get mine behind you. Okay, well, we can bring this back at our next meeting and approve it. I think it's evergreen. I don't think the timing is,
But
I mean, it was livelier, but it'll be livelier again next fall.
But I would like us to discuss as a body how we have flexibility to respond to issues that have immediacy.
Yeah,
I think as a system, we need to figure out a way to be just more nimble to really get together, because we're lucky this is kind of going in our direction at the moment. However, history here doesn't say that always happens, and we need to move much more quickly on issues. So, I mean, it'd be nice to mull over, come back in a month, say, what could we do to make us more effective?
Yep, sounds good.
Well, can I, with that in mind, how did the foundation group respond so quickly with their statements? Did they need to pull their entire body together? Or what structure do you have to respond to political issues?
Well, the library was working to interpret and understand what was happening with the months, and that information was requested and was able to be pulled into a press release.
Yeah. So it came just because you have a staff person that put on press release, or did you need to get the approval of the body that this would represent their stand?
The foundation adopted an advocacy position 2 years ago as part of its work in the world. So it's just a part of the work the foundation does. So there's not special permissions that need to be sought for that.
So as long as the foundation board member who is in that advocacy role supports it.
You're empowered to do it, to make this different.
There's not an advocacy role on the board. It's just that the board supports advocacy work of the foundation.
So they empowered you essentially to
create the
To make it
advocacy
seem on their
docket and
behalf.
get it out.
You're empowered to make it on their behalf.
Right.
I don't think we have that kind of,
Well, it's private versus
Timeliness,
public, so,
right,
I mean,
right.
There's a different dynamic.
yeah,
However,
we don't have
it'd be
that
nice to know
structure.
other groups
Yeah.
have put in place so that they can respond in a more timely fashion.
Yeah, a little more agility. I guess, yeah.
Maybe you should be in our meeting. Maybe we need to see
Well,
if
no,
we
but I
can.
think it's private versus public, so I think
Yeah.
it's an interesting issue, but I'd like to know if there are other city boards that have a structure that allows them to respond in a more timely fashion, or do they simply call a 48-hour notice to ask for approval before public statement goes out?
It's really just us at airport as far as the autonomy.
Airport's not putting out as many public statements.
But we've been in this position a few times. In the past, we've
Yeah.
been a little bit more nimble, and we've been able to call the board and say, but a 10-minute meeting, and how do we stand on this?
Yeah.
Can we get it out immediately?
Yeah.
But under
Yeah.
what, I'd rather have a system in place and be reactive.
Right.
For doing this.
I can also ask some directed groups.
Just, yeah,
if they're
what do they do?
involved, so we-
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
And we don't know if we're not going to need to get together very quickly in this legislative season. I mean, it's not over yet.
Right. Move on to the finance committee. Joseph.
Well, I think Katie said it pretty well. We met, I was the trustees rep for the finance committee. But I'm also on the finance committee foundation board,
Right.
so I sort of. But, we did have a member there too from the foundation board that's on the finance, committee. So Tom was there too.
Yeah.
So we met, and so, as Katie said, we'll have some options for the board to look at, I think, in April. And we're looking specifically at the undesignated gifts account.
So. Yeah.
More to come.
And I don't know, does that qualifies the foundation members report too?
Yeah. 2 nights again.
What I just said,
Say it twice.
So communications were included in the packet. I don't know if anyone has any questions about anything there or any comments about communications.
Did appreciate the full coverage from the news sources. I would also like to second that there were way more books pulled than that. In that Des Moines Register article, that was the beginning of the process. Nowhere, they did not call again. So there were far more than 3,400 books pulled out of schools than that. Just an FYI. But as of yesterday, we can put them back on the shelf. So for now, until we hear back again. So we're doing a little yo-yo with those books on the shelf, the steamy books.
Yeah.
Or whatever you want to call them.
I hope we have them
Of
under lock and
literature.
key.
Yes, I know they're gonna go flying off the shelf, but so there's a lot of stand up and sit down with those books right now. But I just wanted to throw that out there that the injunction is now back in place.
Yeah.
And high schools are opening their boxes and putting them back on the shelf just for an undisclosed amount of time until another unset court date.
So I'm
as
just
an
curious.
FYI.
What's the label on those boxes?
I don't know where they're kept, like, there's no storage in any of these places anyway, too, so where are they putting them? I don't know.
Okay.
But some finagling with behind the scenes to hide and unhide books too from the public view. So we were smart enough to not remove them from the catalog, which many places did do. We were able to work with our vendors to just hide the records from the public searching so that we could put them back on the shelf at another time. But overall, I was kind of impressed with the length and depth of news articles from the Gazette and other sources. You don't always get, but they were pretty fair. Like, even though they're trying to be neutral, they sounded support. I mean, it feels supportive. So that was nice to see.
Yeah. He's probably the fact that I'm upset.
One other piece of feedback that I heard about the foundation's press release was that there was gratitude for all of the hyperlinks that were embedded in the document, which helped to some people directly to jeopardized by the endless funding cuts. And so that was just an interesting, if you think that maybe you're providing too much information, maybe you're not. I think it was one of the things that helped them to write more. So.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I think that brings us to the consent agenda, which consists of approval of the minutes of our February meeting and our disbursements for February. Unless there's some need to pull something from the consent agenda, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move we
Thank you, Bonnie.
consent agenda.
The second from DJ. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And then we'll just quickly review what we have for our next meeting, for our April meeting. The nominations committee, which is meeting tomorrow, will bring a slate for the election of officers. It is also possible to nominate someone from the floor at that meeting. I'll make appointments to the foundation board. We will discuss how to handle board recognition. And we've got the policies on copyright, circulation, and library card, and library use. So that'll be a meaty one. Those three together will be meaty, I predict. We'll look at the financials and have some department reports.
And then are we moving volunteer
Yes.
over?
The volunteer policy will be there. The director evaluation will be there. Thanks for reminding me that we'll move some things around. And the statement, the credo will be there.
That's a big one.
We could move one or two of those policies into May. We only have, I think that meeting we will not use so far in May. I'm not opposed to to a long policy heavy meeting. Sometimes I think it actually works well to have multiple in a row. But if that feels like with the addition of volunteer back into it too much, we could shift it.
Volunteers should go quickly. I think we had a good discussion of that. I don't think that's adding very much. I don't think the credo's adding very much.
I think the director evaluation
Well,
is going to add.
it might, yeah.
Good at-
Which one of the three would we move?
I think we could move 801. We've shifted library use already once.
Okay,
I don't think that copyright or library use are directly connected enough to the circulation of library card policy. That would be a problem to break them up. I don't expect a lot of significant changes in that one, so it might not be a huge time saver, but we could.
okay.
I think copyright could also be moved over depending on how much you want to move.
Well, let's not move everything. Why don't we move, it's okay with everyone.
Do you want library use? Wait, does that one have to stay? Because it
Let's
seems
keep
that,
library use.
okay,
Because it's been delayed.
I would say 814 or 801 probably makes sense to move over. Either of them. or both.
Let's move 801. I think 814 is a real easy one.
I think
But you never,
you never.
yeah, we could start a pool on which policy takes the longest. Okay, we've come to the end of our agenda, so meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for being in for the good discussion.
thank you.